So The Last of Us Part 2 is officially on the way. Or better yet, Last of Us Season 2 is on its way. And we've known that for a long time. The show's been in production for almost a year, somewhere in that ballpark. I know Pedro Pascal was filming not too long before he had to go over to start filming Fantastic Four. I believe that's where the timeline aligns. But recently, we just got a new trailer for The Last of Us Part 2 a couple weeks ago that revealed announce a release date for the show, which is going to be April of 2025, which is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal because that's not that far away. You're going to blink and April is going to be on your ass before you know it. I mean, Jesus, we're at the end of January already. Now, on the channel, I've talked about The Last of Us Part 2, which is what the show is going to be adapted from a variety of different times. I believe about a year and a half ago, I talked about the video game The Last of Us Part 2 and how I still haven't forgiven it even years after its release. Now, what do I mean when I say I haven't forgiven The Last of Us Part 2? The Last of Us Part 2 is a very divisive game that has basically spread its audience into two different separate categories. And there is no in-between. You are pretty much one side or you are the other. I guess you can appreciate things about the game if you hate it. But there's one side of the coin where you fucking hate the game, you hate what it did, you just, why would they do that? And then on the other side you have, yeah, this is a really good story. This is everything it should have been. This is fantastic. I love every minute of this. I love Ellie, I love Dina, I love Jesse, I love Tommy, I love Abby, I love all Abby's friends, I love the entire plot of the game, I love all of it. And for me, you could probably guess which side I'm on. I do not like this game. I do not like The Last of Us Part 2. It's not because Joel died. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you didn't like the game because Joel died. Or, hey, you didn't like the game because of their, political shit. No, dude. Like, people are going to say, oh my god, you didn't like the game because Ellie was gay, or Lev's in it, or this, that, the third. No, I think it's possible that you could just say I didn't like the game because I didn't think that the game was fucking good, dude. I think Joel should have died. I don't think he was ever getting out of that game with being alive. Absolutely not. I think that the critiques, and I know we're like several years past this already, but I think that the critiques that people didn't like the game because Ellie is gay, well, I'm sure there's some douchebags out there that probably think that way. I believe we've known Ellie is gay for, like, a long time. Like, The Last of Us Left Behind. They may have even teased it in the original game. I don't know. I'm actually playing the remastered version of it on PS5. I haven't played The Last of Us in a long, long time. I'm actually playing the remastered version. I'm washed at video games, by the way. But yeah, I think that the fucking thing that, like, Neil and Naughty Dog and the audience throwing out there that, like, people didn't like this game because they didn't like Ellie and Abby, or Ellie and Dina. Well, that's pretty dumb. A lot of the people kind of shit on the relationship between Ellie and Dina, and I know when they shit on it on a narrative sense. Like, Dina doesn't really provide... What the fuck? No, sorry, I'm losing it. That, like, Dina doesn't really, until the end of the story, challenge, conflict. People kind of say that. I don't agree with that. Actually, I'm kind of one of the minority of people who hate this game and actually enjoyed Dina and Ellie's relationship. I do think they could have done more with it, but, I hopefully they'll expand on that in the show a little bit more. Lev, I like Lev a lot. I thought, like, the aspect of the cult, the scars turning on him because of, that is, I thought that was pretty interesting, actually. Sorry if I'm, like, looking skeptical at the camera. My fucking blinking lights. Hold on. Ran out of room in my SD card. That has never happened to me, ever. But yeah, when people think about, like, why they hate The Last of Us Part 2, a lot of, I think that people kind of always go back to, Joel's death and Abby not being a likable character and Naughty Dog just trying to kind of force that onto you, which that's the point of the story. And for me, who does not like The Last of Us Part 2, there are elements about The Last of Us Part 2 that I can absolutely respect and do like and want them to bring into the show. The fact that the first game is about love, this game's about hate, love that. Love how it's a revenge story. Love how it's about empathy. Love how it's about the cycle of violence. Love how it's about revenge tears you apart. I love the setting. I love Seattle. I actually like the new characters that they brought in. For me, the problem was just a failure in execution. That's it. The Last of Us Part 2 it certainly was not the story that I wanted to see at all. For me, The Last of Us has always, at its core, been about the relationship between Joel and Ellie, and in some capacity, The Last of Us Part 2 is, but, you know, whenever you kind of kill that character off in the beginning of the show, or the series, or the game, sorry, that story's not being told anymore. You know, it's their history that's driving this conflict, and that's the call to action for Ellie is Joel's death, and, you know, them trying to have us, you know, feel empathetic for Abby. For me, it just was a massive misfire, because of the layering of the show. I keep saying show, the layering of the game. And I know if you, like, start to change some things around, it becomes a little more complicated because, you know, you're revealing things about the plot as it goes on. I can respect that. If there's anything that The Last of Us Part 2 did as a game, it is highly thought-provoking. It does make you think. It does have that special sauce about it that Naughty Dog brings to their video games. I can't, even somebody who does not like The Last of Us Part 2, for narrative reasons, I cannot, like, fully shit on it because it does bring a lot of elements to it. That's not even talking about the fucking, like, the graphics and the gameplay. I mean, Jesus, man. But yeah, my problems are strictly narrative. I know people are pissed off that they killed Joel. I was pissed off that they killed Joel too. I thought that Joel should die. I think that he always should have died in the second one. I don't think that the choices of his in the first game, I don't think that he should have, you know, gotten away with it. But for me, like, I think that the better story was that the consequences of Joel's actions from the first game start to come in the second game, and Ellie is the one that starts to pay for it. You know, like an attack on the town, and somebody dies, and Ellie is very driven by revenge and hate, and she is becoming Joel and is becoming broken. And how the first game was Ellie fixing Joel, the second game would be kind of like Joel fixing Ellie, trying to strafe her away from this dark, you know, revenge-filled path. But at that point, if you're going to do that, you're just asking for a completely different story, and I guess I am. But that's not without saying that I didn't think that the story of The Last of Us Part 2 could not work. I think maybe if you spend a little more time with Joel, I feel like if you fix the relationship a little bit with Dina and Ellie, at least not fix is the wrong word, but spend more time with them, I think that we probably needed to understand Abby or get to know Abby and start to enjoy Abby as a character before the inciting incident. And I understand that they didn't want to go that path because they wanted to try to make you understand after the fact to forgive her. But from a narrative standpoint, there was nothing really for, like, I understand what she did for Lev, and I understand that Abby, in her own way, it might be a good person, but really, she's kind of not. She's really not a good person. I know what she did was for her dad, and I know that she really had every right to do it, but, like, she's, like, cheating on Mel, she's fucking over her friends, or cheating on Owen with Mel, or, you know what I'm saying, like, being a homewrecker. Why would we like that? I don't know. I like, the big problems with the game, like I said, is you fucking, like, you're halfway through, and the Tommy gets shot scene, and then they switch from Ellie to Abby. It's just not gonna work. And the reason why it's not gonna work is because we have a fucking game and a half of, really, like a game and a half of time spent with Ellie and Joel and these characters. And I don't think it mattered how many puppies you were gonna have Abby pet and how many puppies you were gonna have Ellie kill. These are our people. I'm sorry, you can't. The whole driving factor was us, the audience, the majority of the audience, being able to find empathy of Abby whenever you go through her 3 days of Seattle, and it just didn't work. Like, I can't lie. That's just the case. And maybe if you would have fixed it, it would have been a much better game. Again, I said my problem is with the game that we got. So if you fix some of the elements and you change some things around and you put some scenes here and here and here, you could have probably fixed the majority of the game. But regardless, that's not the story that I really wanted to be told anyway. Like I said, the whole story for me is the relationship between Joel and Ellie, and I feel like that gets not, the second game is just not, you could say it's about it. It's not really about it. You know what I'm saying? I still would have had Joel die at the end of the second game, and the story beat that Joel's consequences are affecting Ellie, which hurts him more than you would know, and he ends up paying the price for it at the end. I think that would have been better. But hey, I'm not here to shit on the video game any more than I've already shit on the video game. You know what I'm saying? But as far as The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last of Us Season 2, after getting the trailer for The Last of Us Season 2, you can clearly tell that the game that they're going to adapt is The Last of Us Part 2. They're not really going to be flipping, changing, moving things around, at least like from a narrative point. From what I can tell, from what I've looked at, Joel's going to be dying pretty early into this thing. I'm not really stoked about seeing Pedro Pascal get his head caved in with a fucking golf club, so I think they're probably going to like change that a little bit. Maybe. I don't like... And I'm sure HBO's not stoked about losing fucking Mr. Fantastic and The Mandalorian 2 episodes into the show. Sure, they're going to have some flashbacks and shit, but I don't think that that's really what they want. But, the trailer shows the porch scene. It shows Ellie in Seattle. It shows the scars. It goes further in. And I think that The Last of Us as a show covering part 2, I think that this is going to take a couple seasons, probably 2 seasons is my understanding. But no matter what, the adventure that Ellie and Dina are going to go on, and Jesse and Tommy, I guess, the inciting incident is still going to be Joel's death. Just like I said, if that's the story you want to tell, fine. I'm not the fucking creator. I can't tell you that shouldn't be the story you want to tell. It's not the story I would tell, but regardless, I think with this being a different medium, this being a show and not a video game, they can play with this a little bit and try to make this into a better story, being told that maybe the audience will be more receptive to. Maybe you start to understand Abby's path and Abby's story, and they introduce her a little earlier like right off the rip. I think right off the rip, you should start with Abby and her dad in the forest, and all the events leading up to Joel's massacre in the hospital. I think you should try to really get across to the audience the relationship she had with her dad. I would probably spend a little more time with Joel and Ellie before, my fear is they're going to kill Joel at the end of, episode 1 or 2, which would be a massive mistake. I think you should kill him. If you're going to kill him, episode 3, episode 4, give it some time to breathe, let these narratives come through, and eventually, if you start to understand Abby's side of it a little bit more, maybe you can get her empathy sooner. The good thing about this being a show and not a game is you can switch perspectives from Ellie to Abby flawlessly, when in the game that might be a little more challenging to do that. Not impossible, but a little more challenging to do that. In the show, I think you can do that a little bit more. I don't see how you're going to kill... That's just so hard to me. I think HBO is going to be pissed, right? Neil Druckmann loves the story he's told. Craig likes the story. So it's not changing. Some elements might change because it's an adaptation. But the inciting incident of all of this, of Ellie going to Seattle, will still be Joel's death. In the trailers of the game, the inciting incident was Dina's death, because they were hiding from you that Joel dies. Still think there's a way you could have done the game where that's the case. I think you just have to spend a lot of time with Dina. There's a path here. You know what I'm saying? From what I'm trying to say is, I think that The Last of Us Season 2, I'm very excited about it, but I don't want Neil Druckmann to be so stuck in his ways to tell the exact same story that you end up just kind of fucking up the whole show. I really believe if you have Pedro Pascal get his head caved in with a golf club at the end of episode 1 or episode 2, you're going to lose a lot of your audience. I really believe it. And it's just not going to go over well. Maybe you can change his death to where he gets shot, but this is, this won't be on the same level of longtime fans of The Walking Dead watching Glenn die, and they all switched off after that. But a lot of people switched off of it because of the brutality of it and the way it made them feel. And I remember whenever I originally played the game, just being affected. And that was the point. The brutality of it in the game was supposed to make you feel as broken as it humanly possibly could. So then you're full of rage, like Ellie, storming through Seattle. And then you switch to Abby to try to build empathy for her, but you're still filled with rage. And all you can be thinking the entire time you're playing as Abby of how you don't want to play as Abby. And The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't really let you make that choice if you're going to feel like it just kind of forces that onto you and tells you how you're supposed to feel. What I liked about the end of The Last of Us Part 1 is you have to determine if Joel's actions were just or not. The Last of Us Part 2 tells you they absolutely were not just. I think the narrative that you could have had, these consequences of Joel's actions really piling on Ellie, and Joel lives to the end of the show, you can still make that, you can make that choice yourself if you believe that Joel's actions were morally justifiable or not. The Last of Us Part 2 tells you it's not. What Joel did was wrong, and maybe it was. But they give you that choice to decide, and it was thought-provoking. And The Last of Us Part 2 is thought-provoking, but for different reasons. Maybe at the end of The Last of Us Part 2, the video game, you could have decided if you wanted to take revenge on Abby or not. To decide if you were willing to forgive. The problem is the game does not give you that choice. But I understand as I'm talking about it, I'm diving into a bunch of different areas, but that, to Neil Druckmann's credit and Naughty Dog's credit, that's how thought-provoking The Last of Us Part 2 is. And I have to respect that, at the very least, how intrigued I am about the whole thing. And how I will be watching The Last of Us Part 2, or The Last of Us Season 2, because I'm curious, because I'm intrigued, because I'm interested to see how gun-ho they are at this story when commercial game they've ever made. And with the announcement of the new game coming out, the space one, it got more hate than like because people are still upset. Naughty Dog has not really won back the audience because they haven't really, they've released a couple remasters and they've released the original show, or the season 1. But this is the first game back, and the audience haven't, come back completely to The Last of Us. And I know there's a handful of people that still like The Last of Us Part 2, and they see no problem with it, and that's fucking great. If that's your cup of tea, I love that for you. But regardless, the facts are the facts. Most people, or a lot of people, are really upset about this game and no longer trust Naughty Dog. I think that The Last of Us Season 2, being given a second chance to get this right, they have a chance to really fix things here. And I'm not saying that you need to fix things by saving Joel, or you need to fix things by completely changing it. My fear is that the actors of the show and the creator, or the actors of the game and the creators of the game, and everybody who is a part of The Last of Us Part 2 making it, are still on this righteous path where they believe that that was the right choice, and they are not going to go back from it. And I don't trust that they're not going to do it in The Last of Us Part 2. My fear is that they're going to go the same fucking route. And we're going to follow Ellie the majority of Season 2, and maybe Season 3 we're going to follow the majority of Abby. And maybe that works better in a show medium, I don't know yet. But yeah, man, I'm not stoked about it. Or maybe I am. I guess I am stoked about it, because I'm here and I'm talking about it. So yeah, The Last of Us Season 2, are you excited for it? I think I am, man. Even though I didn't like the game and the adaptation of the game, the trailers have looked great. I'm intrigued to see what happens here. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, love, adios, and bye-bye.